tend to have a bit of a mental model that won't work for us right now. We get together, we meet, we align, and we go, great, we're aligned. And now we assume that we are aligned until we hear down the road otherwise. I actually think that gets us into a lot of frustration, because the speed with which things are changing means the second we move out of our meeting, we actually need to move on the assumption that we are no longer aligned. We're really only aligned those few moments when we're actually together. Therefore, we really need to sort of accelerate that cadence of those meetings and communication.
What are the questions to ask here, Elizabeth?
Yeah, so having a shared understanding, this actually comes from the military, a shared understanding of the current purpose. What is the intent of our mission now? So everyone, when they're operating in that, at a distance from their teammates and they're not always aligned, how do I make judgment calls? Well, if I understand the intent. Does the cadence of our meetings match the rate of change? If things are changing weekly or every other day, do you have a way to check in and pivot that is shorter than that pace of change? What other communications need to increase in frequency? And then have we agreed on and implemented a routine for change? Can you actually build in a little stability here, like a pit stop in a racetrack, where when some new announcement comes in, you have a way to come together and huddle and determine what it means for you. So Anton, I know you bring this in from the Agile and Scrum world, one of the best practices around the cadence of meetings being little and often.
Very much, and this is where I think in many ways where the shift that Scrum took to meetings was very much based on the same problem. And I'd say that now, whether you're in Scrum or not, that idea of daily stand-ups, check-ins, quite often now it's even more than once a day because things are happening so fast.
Yeah. It would be really easy in this situation to just layer on more. And I think looking at some of the responses that we saw at the beginning today, you get a sense that that is what's happening for a lot of people. But actually, the important thing here is more like design. It's getting the little and often working well, and also thinking in a thoughtful way about which stuff actually requires people to be together at one time synchronously. Which stuff is better done some other way to fit around the other things that are going on in their lives so that their workday can be designed to get the work done in a different way. There was some research done by INSEAD last month in Europe, which really highlighted the amount of attention that was going on to synchronous communications and the lack of attention to the other things that could go on, and particularly the things that could help team members who are trying to flex their day to get the job done in a different way. And I thought that was a very helpful call out.
I saw a team with a leader, they agreed, in fact, that based on what was happening to them right now, that they moved all their meetings from an hour down to half an hour. And they said what was really interesting, because they all bought into that, because you can't control all the meetings, but the ones they could, is it obliged the people having the meeting to be much more specific on what they wanted and to get out. And it gave them a bit of time to take some action steps rather than going from one meeting straight into the next. I thought it was quite an interesting idea.
Yeah. I love the questions that Scrum meetings, the basics that I've come across of, I think the way they ask, what have you done since we last met? What are you going to do next? And what limits your progress? I mean, it's really distilled. The other thing, to the last best practice here, a lot of times we have long meetings because we're covering things that we haven't clarified or made agreements on. We'll get to commitments, but this idea of guiding principles, for example, as a leader, what if you came up with a guiding principle that says, flag me, raise your hand in a meeting if I'm off track. Let's have a protocol for calling a question that I'm making a bad assumption, so that you can shortcut to things because you've made agreements for flexing quickly. And I think this is a tool that many leaders could use to make their teams more agile and more confident in a period of a lot of uncertainty.